Haruto is a disgusting college student who is always cautious about Truck-kun, so he took the bus to school. However, he didn't know he had a friend called Train-kun, and Haruto was struck and sent to another world. Haruto wakes up in the body of a smelly, poor, orphan boy. While looking around, he didn't recognize his surroundings, and soon the memories of his past life came rushing in. He realized he had merged minds with a boy called Ryo. A group of adventurers walk in the room carrying food and a huge bag, bragging about how easy their last job was. Ryo is starving, but one of the adventurers tells him to go clean his stinky ass. Ryo fills his stomach with grass, still wondering who this Haruto is, but he ignores it, realizing it doesn't matter as he remembers his mother promising to take him back to her hometown before she was assaulted and slaughtered right in front of him. A group of privileged women call him a dirty loser, asking him if he had seen a girl with light purple hair. A girl named Celia asks him politely if he had seen their friend Flora, but Ryo denies seeing the girl. Celia uses a magic spell to check if Ryo is telling the truth, but they discover an enormous magical aura coming from Ryo. Everyone is surprised how this boy of low birth can have such magical energy. Celia gives Ryo some silver coins for his trouble, and he runs back, hiding the coins. When Ryo walked into the room, an assassin stabs him, but the bag of coins blocks the dagger from piercing his heart. Ryo looks around. However, he finds the adventurers have been slaughtered. The assassin continues to attack when suddenly an anime waifu with big assets appears, imprinting an unusual ability that allows him to enforce his body. Ryo is suddenly able to block the attacks and push the assassin back. He manages to use an unworldly fighting style Haruto had learned from his grandpa. The assassin keeps launching attacks, but Ryo manages to evade and break the assassin's arm, leaving him wondering who this boy is. After knocking the assassin out, Ryo sees the bag the adventurers had brought moving. He checks inside and finds the purple-haired girl. He realizes the adventurers kidnapped this girl, and she asks him to take her to the castle, promising a huge reward, but after seeing the bodies of the slain adventurers, she passes out. Ryo is carrying the girl on his back when the group of rude women finds him and accuse him of kidnapping Princess Flora. He tries to explain, but the second princess, Christina, interrupts him and accuses him of lying. The knight accompanying the girls draws her sword, asking him to accompany them to the castle. Soon, the crime scene is discovered, and the guards apprehend the assassin. In the crowd, a mysterious man seems disappointed by the current events and crushes a piece of red stone. Suddenly, the assassin's heart stops, and he turns into a corpse. In the castle, Ryo is getting beat up by Charles, the vice captain of the guards. He tries to make Ryo confess to kidnapping Flora to cover up his own incompetence. However, Ryo refuses to submit and tells him the only crime he committed is tapping his mom. Flora wakes up and tells Vanessa to bring the boy to her because he saved her and should be rewarded. Ryo is still getting tortured by Charles, who wants to cover his mistake by blaming it on Ryo when Vanessa and Celia barge in, explaining that Ryo is a hero who saved the princess. Ryo collapses from his injuries, and Celia starts to heal him. He wakes up in the castle, and Celia apologizes, explaining that the king wishes to speak to him. Ryo meets the king and is given a scholarship to the academy as a reward for saving Princess Flora. Celia explains that she is a professor and introduces Ryo to his class, but one of his classmates calls him an illiterate commoner. After the lesson, Ryo heads to Celia's office to get some private tutoring. Ryo is excited to get some ass, but it's too early for plot development. After studying for a few hours, Ryo solves all the questions correctly because they're easy for a college student. Celia asks if he had any problems at school. He feels mistreated but shrugs it off and asks Celia to borrow some books instead. Ryo attends the swordsman class, and the instructor notices his strange sword technique. He asks Ryo to strike him, and Ryo drops the shield he was training with and confuses everyone when he takes a weird stance. The attacks impress everyone, as these techniques were taught to Haruto by his grandfather, but the same brat keeps making fun of Ryo. The instructor asks Ryo if he ever considered becoming a knight, but Ryo tells him he is not planning to. A few months have passed, and the day of the exam comes. Everyone seems to be having a hard time, but Ryo has been studying hard in his private lessons with Celia. Time passed in the academy, and Ryo hasn't made any friends. He kept getting more of Haruto's memories, especially Haruto's crush. However, Ryo snaps back into reality, telling himself he needs to focus on his studies. The results of the last exam are announced, and Rio gets the highest score at school along with Princess Christina. The brat who kept bullying Rio accuses him of cheating, calling him a commoner loser who would never be able to score as high as the princess. However, Rio tells him he only studied, and Celia acknowledges his thrusting abilities, asking if the brat had any evidence that Rio cheated. The big brat is ashamed in front of everyone and retreats immediately. Celia congratulates Rio for getting the top score and tells him that the nobles will bully him more now. She tells him that he can lay on her chest at any time for comfort and plot development, but Rio tells her he would rather get bullied because she is flat as a board.
Emotional, damn it!
5 years have passed, and in the swordsmanship class, 3 students are picked to participate in a duel against 3 Imperial Knights, and Rio is chosen to be one of them. The brat objects, telling the instructor that letting Rio participate would put the academy to shame since he can't use magic, but the instructor had already made his decision and ignores him. Back in Celia's office, she wonders how Rio's third leg got so big. Tall, he got tall. However, Rio tells her he aged normally and asks how she is still so flat that someone might mistake her for a piece of cardboard. Celia wonders about Rio's plans after graduation, and he tells her about his plans to leave for his parents' homeland called the Yagamo region, where his mother grew up before marrying his father. The day of the duel came, and Rio is the first to participate. The brat warns him about embarrassing the academy, telling him no one expects anything from a commoner. Rio's opponent turns out to be Charles, the knight who tortured him, and he calls him a dirty brat and promises to wipe the floor with him. The knight commander, Alfred, is surprised by Rio's stance, and Charles thinks Rio is mocking him for fighting without a shield. Charles rushes in anger, seeking revenge because he got demoted after that incident 5 years ago. However, Rio finds an opening in his attacks and knocks the sword out of his hands. Alfred announces Rio as the winner, but Charles says he was only messing around and that he will fight for real if he gets another chance. However, Alfred tells him a loss is a loss, embarrassing him for losing to a mere student. That night, Charles gets drunk with Rice, who was seen outside the crime scene 5 years ago. Rice wonders about the boy who was the only one to win his match, and Charles confirms that it's the same one from the incident back then. Celia is waiting for Rio to congratulate him for winning the match. However, she sees him meeting with a girl behind the school. The girl confesses her love to him, leaving Celia in shock, wondering about her own feelings towards Rio. The next day in class, Celia asks her students to demonstrate their magic control by using light magic. However, the little brat points out that they are only asked to continue studying light magic because Rio can't keep up with his studies. After that speech, the big brat and the little brat are only able to summon small light orbs, and Celia shows them what true light magic mastery should look like. Rio wonders why he can't use magic and is only able to copy magic using some other mysterious power. The little brat compliments his professor for her magic and tells Rio to stop seducing the girls in the academy after only winning once against a knight. Celia tells the little brat not to throw baseless accusations, but the brat warns Rio that his household will not stand for such behavior. Princess Flora feels sorry and indebted to Rio for helping her. She admires him for being able to handle everything on his own and wishes she could help. In a few days, the class is ready for their practical exam, and the big brat explains the mission, which is to reach a certain destination as quickly as possible. With a smirk on his face, he shows them a map for a shortcut that he obtained from the guards in his household, bragging that they should reach their destination by noon. The little brat tells Rio to carry all their bags since he can't use magic, and Rio accepts with no objections. Flora feels bad for Rio and offers to help him, but Rio tells her he will be fine. Suddenly, goblins attack. Without too much struggle, the students use artifacts to boost their abilities and take down the monsters. The little brat brags about how easy it was, and the big one makes fun of Rio for not being able to offer any assistance. However, Rio was distracted because he was the only one who noticed someone following them. Rice is surprised Rio could spot him from such a long distance and decides to test him. The group reaches the end of the tree line, but there seems to be a cliff before their destination. Suddenly, a group of orcs attack. Everyone panics, and in the midst of the chaos, the little brat gets injured and accidentally pushes Princess Flora off the cliff. Rio acts quickly, jumping to save the princess and managing to push her back up using a wind spell. He falls off the cliff, but everyone focuses on the fight. Working together, they take formation and use magic to defeat the monsters. Rio survives but wonders if his classmates will be suspicious after he survived the fall without a scratch. He keeps wondering about his mysterious powers and how he obtained them. In the distance, Rio hears his classmates blaming the little brat for pushing the princess, but he throws the blame on Rio, saying Rio pushed him instead. Rio realizes that the situation is not in his favor and chooses to escape. Princess Flora tries to defend Rio, but out of nowhere, a powerful monster appears. The students band together to attack it. The powerful magic attacks don't make a scratch, and the vanguard are knocked back easily. All the students retreat, leaving Flora and an injured student behind. Flora is about to be attacked when Rio manages to get a critical hit on the beast. He instructs her to escape while he keeps the monster busy. Rio uses an enforcement spell on his body, allowing him to keep slashing at the monster. The monster keeps attacking, but Rio manages to block every attack. He finds an opening, allowing him to take the beast's head clean off. Flora's classmates find her, and Rio quickly disappears into the forest. In the distance, Rice is glad he got to witness Rio's talent and his ability to use the rare spirit arts. Back in the academy, Celia is heading to the headmaster's office when she accidentally hears him talking to the little brat. The brat convinces the headmaster to blame the incident on Rio, and the headmaster agrees to avoid any trouble between the royal family and the little brat's family. Celia goes back to her office, wondering what happened on the test and if she will ever see Rio again. Rio sneaks into her office, and she runs toward him. She hugs him, telling him how worried she was. Celia explains he's been framed, but Rio tells her the truth doesn't matter and no one cares to listen to a disgusting commoner. He thanks Celia for helping him during his 5 years in the academy and tells her he will always write to her using the name Haruto as an alias. They have one last hug before he departs for the Yagamo region. The next day, the father of the little brat commands a little girl called Latifa to find Rio and kill him using a piece of cloth to track his scent. Rio runs through the forest at an incredible speed, jumping through the trees and avoiding all the monsters. In 3 days, he reaches the next town and is relieved when he doesn't see his face on the wanted posters. He walks through the market, planning to stock up on supplies, when he suddenly feels the presence of someone following him. A shopkeeper offers Rio a dish called pasta, and Rio wonders if the dish came from Haruto's world. He asks the shop owner, and it turns out the governor invented the pasta and many other dishes. After trying the food, Rio is more certain this governor came from the same place as Haruto. Rio decides to stock up on some noodles for the journey ahead, and the owner tells him to head to the Rika Merchant Guild. Rio heads there and is greeted by one of the shopkeepers. She guides him through the shop, offering all the supplies he asked for. Rio sends a letter to Celia reassuring her of his safety, but tells her he won't be able to send any more letters since he will be leaving the city. Rio departs, running through the woods with his enforcement magic, but he's surprised when he finds a child passed out on the ground. He checks up on her, but she suddenly throws a poison dart at him. Rio feels dizzy and is about to pass out, but he starts detoxifying his body immediately. Latifa calls him by his name, Rio, and tries to slash him with her dagger. After exchanging blows, Latifa wonders how a human can be so fast. Rio manages to pin her down, but she starts crying and calling for her mother. Realizing she is only a helpless girl, Rio knocks her out. After tying her up, Rio notices an enslavement collar on the girl and wonders if he will be able to break it with a spell he read in a book. Rio activates his magic, and the collar breaks off. Inside Latifa's memories, she remembers being on the bus with Haruto when they got hit by Train-kun. Latifa woke up as a beast girl, confused by the little brat ordering her to call him master and then torturing her. She wakes up to Rio explaining that if she wants to live, she mustn't get violent with him. Rio shows Latifa the collar, and she cries out of happiness for finally being free. He asks her about the man who gave the order, but she doesn't know. However, she remembers the young master's name, Stuart, and Rio realizes it's the little brat. Rio asks if Latifa has any intention of trying to kill him, but Latifa promises to be a good girl. Rio sets her free and advises her to head east where beast people like her have settled and created cities. Latifa is confused, wondering where she should go, so she follows Rio. After a while, she asks him not to leave her alone. Rio tries to scare her away and tells her she shouldn't trust him because he would never trust her either, but Latifa begs him to take her with him, offering to put the enslavement collar on. Rio tells her to ditch the collar of enslavement, and he lets her accompany him. She tells him her name is Latifa, and they start their journey together. Later that day, Rio offers Latifa some food, and she starts crying because the little brat didn't feed her well enough. After 3 weeks, Celia receives Rio's letters, and she's happy he is traveling fast and safe. Rio is cooking some food when Latifa recognizes it as spaghetti, making him wonder if she came from Haruto's world. Later at night, Latifa talks in her sleep, calling for her family and brother, wishing she could go back to Tokyo, which makes Rio sure she is from the same world as Haruto. In the morning, Latifa realizes Haruto looks exactly like the boy on the bus. Rio wakes up, and she asks him if she can call him brother. Rio tells her she can call him stepbrother anytime she wants. Rio and Latifa travel together for weeks until they reach a ginormous tree that only Rio can see. They enter the forest heading to the tree. The night comes, and they settle for the night, but Latifa can't sleep well from the nightmares. Rio decides to use a sleeping spell to take away the nightmares. He hears a voice outside, and after checking it out, he sees a large wolf in the distance, but out of nowhere, a bright light blinds him. A group of 4 girls start attacking Rio after finding traces of the magic used to put Latifa to sleep. Rio declares he wishes to speak, but the girls refuse to listen and keep attacking. Rio manages to block some of their attacks. However, they manage to pin him down and restrain him. In his weakened state, Rio finds himself floating in an unfamiliar space. The pink-haired waifu starts calling his name. He asks who she is. However, she doesn't seem to know. She only knows of her connection to him, and she tells him what every weeb wants to hear at least once in their life.
I belong only to you.
They run out of time, and she explains that he will understand who she is soon enough. Rio wakes up to Latifa hugging him in tears. An elder comes in the room and apologizes, and the 4 girls who attacked him get on their knees to apologize as well. After taking off his restraints, the elder informs him of a meeting she arranged with the village elders to thank him for saving Latifa. In the morning, Rio is being escorted by the elder when he asks about the large tree. The elder is impressed he could see the world tree and asks if he had a teacher in the spirit arts. However, Rio tells her he taught himself by imitating others. Rio meets the elders, and they bow to him, apologizing for the way he's been treated by their warriors, offering him any gift he desires. Rio asks that they let Latifa stay in the village and allow him to stay with her until she gets used to living without him. They accept and offer him to marry a girl from the village. Suddenly, a voice interrupts the conversation, and the world tree spirit Lady Dryas appears. She tells him there is a spirit living inside him and asks if he had made a contract with it, since those who are contracted to a spirit can only use spirit arts. She gets closer, telling him there is a lot of power inside him, and she would like to suck it off. Suck the magic off. She explains there is a person-shaped spirit inside him, and it is one of the 6 spirits of the old world. The elders wonder if they should treat Rio as a saint, which is the strongest and most dignified title anyone can have. Rio is led to a penthouse with a great view, and the girls are asked to live with Rio and attend to his every need. Lucky bastard. As time passed, Rio learned many things, such as how to use spirit arts, make weapons, and how to take baths with 3 girls. Life is not fair for us, but the seasons passed, and after a year, the people of the spirits held a celebration for the world tree. In a desert-like territory, Rice and his attendant rode on a griffin, reaching a cave where Rice retrieved a wyvern egg. He explained that it would be a fine addition to their forces, and after taking off, a group of wyverns could be seen following them. Back in the village, they celebrated a year's passing with Rio and Latifa, and the party commenced with Lady Dryas kissing Rio and Latifa on the head. Rio found himself surrounded by girls, finally excited to be a true anime protagonist and see his harem grow. The girls asked Rio if they should get ready for plot development, but our protagonist was a little wimp and refused to engage in late-night wrestling. The elder walked in, and Rio informed her he would be leaving the village soon. She told him that it would be difficult for Latifa, but he should leave if he thought she was ready. Next to the village, Rice and his attendant decided to rest for the night. He told his attendant he was going to investigate the area and gave him a red stone, explaining that it would allow him to pinpoint his location and heal him if he got into trouble. Rice ascended above and watched the wyverns as they approached his attendant. In the forest, Rio and Latifa were taking a walk when Rio suddenly broke the news that he would be leaving the village alone. Latifa refused Rio's decision and insisted on going with him, but when Rio objected, Latifa ran away crying. Back in the village, the elders noticed a reaction around the barrier protecting the world tree and sent their warriors to investigate. In the wyvern's cave, Rice collected the rest of the eggs while the wyverns were occupied. The warriors sensed the attendant with the egg, but as soon as they confronted him, he took off flying. The warriors tried to shoot him down with a lightning spear, realizing he was headed to the village, but before they could catch him, the wyverns arrived and slashed the attendant from behind. He managed to evade, but soon, Rice finished collecting the eggs and decided the attendant had served his purpose, getting rid of him by crushing the red stone. Latifa was headed back to the village when the egg came down, shattering in front of her. The wyverns saw their egg and screamed in anger, sending panic across the village. Rio heard the scream and wondered why everyone was heading to shelter. The elder told him a horde of wyverns was attacking, and the festival had been cancelled. Rio was worried about Latifa and ran toward the sound. Latifa was about to be burned by the wyvern's flames when a warrior protected her using a tornado spell. The warrior attacked with her hammer, but the wyvern's scales were too strong, and she got pushed against a tree. Latifa tried to help by distracting the beast, but it managed to catch up to her. She was about to be crushed when Rio launched an ice spear at the beast, knocking it back. Rio got Latifa to safety and proceeded to attack the beast with his bare hands. The wyvern tried using its fire, but Rio blasted its mouth with so much spirit energy and closed its jaw, burning it from the inside out. The wyverns all scattered after seeing how powerful Rio was, and the girls were impressed, telling Rio he made them wet. Sorry, I meant they were impressed he took them down without breaking a sweat. In the morning, Latifa apologizes for the way she acted last night and hugs Rio, then thanks him for the kindness he showed her. Rio tells her his destination is the Yagamo region because it was the land his parents came from. It is the first time Latifa learns anything about him, so she wanted to tell him something as well. She confesses she had a life in Japan and got reincarnated and sent to this world. Latifa is surprised when Rio believes her and tells her he is also from Japan. Rio explains he wanted to tell her but was afraid the truth would stir up his regrets. Latifa asks if those regrets are still haunting him, but Rio tells her they must survive, so he let those regrets go. Rio is about to depart, and everyone comes to say goodbye. The elders give him S-class artifacts. The dwarfs craft a mithril sword and armor of legendary power that can get stronger by absorbing his spirit arts, and the elves leave him secret medicines while beast people leave food and drinks. They also give him a legendary artifact to help store his belongings. Everyone is sad to see Rio leave, especially her. She is very heavy-chested. Sad. After 2 weeks of wandering in the region, Rio didn't find any clues about his parents. He decides to talk to the residents. He asks a couple of girls to meet the village head. Seo takes one look at Rio and starts naming their babies. Ruri tells Rio she can take him since she is the head's granddaughter. Yuba meets Rio and wonders if he is from another country due to his strange clothes. Rio explains he traveled through many lands to meet her. Yuba suggests they talk over dinner, and Rio explains his parents used to live in the Yagamo region. Their names were Zen and Iomi. Yuba is shocked on hearing those names, and she instructs Ruri and Seo to leave so they can talk privately. She asks Rio for more details, and he tells her his parents have both died, but his mother promised to take him to the Yagamo region one day. Yuba turns out to be Zen's mother, Rio's grandmother, and she takes Rio to his parents' memorial. After paying his respects, he inquires why his parents left, but Yuba explains it's not something she could tell him now. However, he would find out eventually if he lived with her and his cousin Ruri. Rio accepts, and Yuba tells him his parents' identity will be their little secret. Next morning, Rio wakes up early and decides to cook some breakfast, but before he could get started, Ruri comes out with some jiggly plot. Rio makes breakfast while Seo and her older brother Shin join them for breakfast. After stuffing their insides with Shin's meat, Yuba asks Shin to take Rio hunting, and Shin realizes Rio is going to steal his bitches. The hunt starts, and Rio makes it look so easy, bringing a feast to the village, making Shin feel useless. After the hunt, Rio creates a bath with his spirit arts, and on his way out, Ruri and Seo find the place and start sniffing his scent and wonder why he smells nice and breathable. Before Rio could start, Shin and his disgusting side characters interrupt them and get jealous after finding out Ryo is him. Ryo spends his days working in the village, and soon a year has passed. Yuba asks Ryo to guard their harvest on its way to be sold at the capital. A commotion breaks out in the distance. Gon, the next village chief's son, and his underlings tried to enter the bath while Ruri and Seo were inside. Shin tells Gon no one will develop plot with his sister except for the protagonist. Ruri asks what Gon is doing in their village, and Gon tells her he wants to spend the night with her and Granny because his cart broke down, and she should treat him right since he might become her husband one day. Shin tries to punch Gon, but he blocks it, reaching for Shin's neck. Yuba stops the fight, then apologizes for Shin's behavior and allows Gon to stay at a guest hut as long as he never leaves it. On their way out, Gon notices Ryo and tries to mess with him but falls on his face like a little bit. Yuba instructs everyone to go home, and Shin asks if Seo could stay with Yuba and Ruri to make her feel safer. That night, before going to bed, Ryo gives the girls a protective amulet. On the edge of the village, Gon is bragging about how he busted the cart and his plans to have fun with the girls tomorrow. The next morning, Hayato, the tax examiner, arrives, and the inspection begins. Ryo is training his body when Seo and Ruri are caught watching. They wonder why Ryo works so hard, and Ryo remembers his crush and worries she might have already moved on. That night, Gon sneaks into the villa, but the amulet activates. He enters the girl's room and closes Ruri's mouth, but Seo wakes up. He threatens to punch Ruri if they scream, but suddenly Ryo appears and takes out Gon's lackeys. After seeing him on top of Ruri, Ryo remembers how his mother was attacked. Gon runs at Ryo, but he gets flipped over with one strike like a pancake. Ryo steps on his neck, then proceeds to smash Gon's face. The girls beg Ryo to stop, and Hayato grabs his hand, stopping him before ending Gon. The kingdom is notified of the incident, and Ryo wonders why this is the second time he wished to kill someone. He forgot about his revenge and started to feel more like Haruto and less like Ryo. He wishes to be better than the man who slayed his mother and regrets his violence. The next morning, Hayato is ready to depart. He takes Gon and the taxes with him, but as he is about to leave, Yuba gives him a message to deliver to his father. Ryo, Shin, and Seo depart with Hayato, and several days later, they reach the capital. Ryo enjoys new food, and Shin thanks him for saving Seo. Later that day, Ryo and Seo are exploring the market for supplies when a shop lady suggests he buys a gift for his girlfriend. Seo tries to explain that they are not a couple, but the merchant says they look cute together. Seo picks an ornament with flowers, and Ryo pays for it. Nearby, a little girl is being kidnapped by a couple of goons. Her guard calls out for someone to help when Ryo steps in, flipping the guy in the air and catching the girl from falling. The woman thanks Ryo for saving her mistress, but Ryo prefers to stay away from trouble, so he runs off with Seo before the guards arrive. In the Lord's house, Hayato is informed by his father that his sister was almost kidnapped and how the criminals managed to escape. Hayato hands his father the letter from Yuba. After reading the letter, the Lord's hands start shaking, and he asks if his son had met someone called Ryo. After Ryo and Seo return, everyone wonders where she got her new hairpin. Suddenly, Hayato and his father appear with a woman. They introduce themselves as Guki and Kyoko. Ryo finds out the man and lady in front of him were his mother's attendants. His mother was Lady Karasuki Ayam, the daughter of the current king of Karasuki. Guki tells the story of Ryo's father, Zen. 20 years ago, Zen was a talented warrior who was bestowed the title of Warrior Noble, the highest rank a soldier can have in the Karasuki kingdom. Guki acknowledged his power and requested that he guard Ryo's mother. After the war, a truce was being negotiated, but the prince acting as ambassador requested to marry Ayam and for Ryo's father to be executed. Thus, his parents ran away from their home. Ryo meets his grandparents, the king and queen, who wonder about the fate of their daughter and her husband. They are shocked after they find out Ayam was brutally murdered in front of Ryo by Lucius, a man who adventured with Ryo's father and kept helping them even after Zen's death. After his mother's death, Ryo found himself in the slums and lived there for 2 years. He also tells them about saving Princess Flora, studying in the academy, and his journey until now. No matter what the future holds, he will never forgive Lucius. The king suggests Ryo train under Guki, as he is the finest warrior in the kingdom, hoping this will prepare him for revenge. On their way to the training ground, Ryo meets the guard again, and she tells Gookie how Rio is responsible for saving his daughter. Inside the arena, Rio leaps forward, surprising Gookie with incredible speed. Strike after strike, everyone is surprised that Gookie is barely defending himself. Gookie prepares a powerful magical attack, but Rio overwhelms him with his spirit arts and manages to win the duel. The king is impressed and thinks Rio won't be needing any training. Rio asks if it would be alright if he can tell his cousin about his lineage, and the king allows it. That night, Rio reveals his identity to Ruri as the prince of the Karasuki kingdom. Ruri is surprised and starts bowing, but Rio tells her there is no need for formalities between cousins and informs her that he has decided to leave the village in a year. Seasons pass, and Rio continues living among the villagers. In the spring, Rio teaches Ruri and Seo how to farm rice. He approaches Seo, telling her she would teach everyone after he's gone. She wonders what he means by gone, and he informs her he will be leaving after the harvest festival. She asks if he would visit them regularly, but Rio explains that he will be traveling across the country, so it would be difficult. Seo couldn't hold back the tears and pretended there was dirt in her eyes. Later that day, she collapses crying, and Shin sees this. He asks if Rio hurt her, but Seo tells him it is because Rio is leaving. Shin runs to Yuba's place, begging Rio to stay in the village, but he is soon dragged away by his embarrassed sister. Another season passes, and Shin tries to lift his sister's spirits, but all she can think about is how to get stronger so she can accompany Rio. The harvest festival comes, and Seo decides to confess her feelings. She asks if she could accompany him, but my boy Rio shuts her down hard. The next day, he sets off early after saying goodbye to everyone. At the village gate, Seo waits to say her final goodbyes and promises to work hard until they meet again. Rio arrives at the World Tree and is met with Latifa and the warrior girls. After greeting each other, Rio meets with the elders and tells them about his journey so far. They wonder when he would be leaving, and he tells them he would only be spending a few months. They inquire if he needs anything on his journey, and he asks for a mobile house he could keep in his storage space. Later that night, the girls are happy Rio had grown so much and wonder if he wants to develop plot, but Rio is a wimp and only pats them on the head. Next morning, Rio wakes up feeling huge balloons on his arms. After seeing a girl, he wonders if it's time for plot development, but these ugly bitches interrupt the story. Rio asks the girl how she got there, and she says she's a spirit. He figures out she's the girl who gave him his powers and wonders why she manifested so late. He asks her name, but she doesn't know it and requests Rio gives her one. The girls wonder why she keeps calling him Haruto, and Rio say he will explain later. He tells her to call him Rio, but she starts talking telepathically and tells him she belongs to him and only for him, something a girl would never say to you.
I can't tie my shoes, but I can fuck your bitch.
Rio tells her to come with him, and she suddenly stands up, showing insane amount of plot. After seeing how beautiful she looks, he gives her the name of Aisha, which means big booba. No, sorry, it means warm spring. In the council room, Lady Dryas introduces herself and wonders how she lost her memories. She asks Aisha what elements she can control, and Aisha responds with all of them, leaving everybody impressed. Lady Dryas requests that Rio and Aisha duel, so she could better judge her abilities. The battle commences once a stone hits the ground and Aisha evades Rio's attack by going into her spirit forms. Rio tries hand-to-hand combat, but Aisha manages to block all his attacks. He launches ice spears, and Aisha responds by launching the same spells. The fight intensifies when they summon powerful tornadoes. However, Lady Dryas stops the match before they can destroy the village. She decides it is better to teach Aisha how to control her powers more proficiently. In the course of 3 months, Aisha learns control, and the house Rio requested is ready. Seeing this, Rio decides it's time to leave. That night, Rio is taking a bath when Latifa comes in asking to wash his back. Latifa likes how big Rio's back has become and wonders if his third leg has grown bigger too. The back scrub ends with Latifa hugging Rio, wondering if she would see him soon. Next morning, Rio is gifted with a teleportation artifact that would allow him to travel to the village. He says goodbye and flies out with Aisha. Rio decides to visit Celia before traveling any further. He had been trying to reach her with letters, but she stopped responding. After reaching the city, Rio disguises his black hair and wonders why the streets are so crowded. He asks a bakery owner, and she informs him that a royal wedding is taking place the next day. Rio decides to visit the academy at night, but to his surprise, he cannot find Celia. He decides to ask one of the faculty members, and Aisha hypnotizes him using spirit arts. The man tells Rio that Celia is staying at the imperial castle for the Duke's wedding. She is marrying Charles, the disgusting, ugly knight who tortured Rio. In the last few years, the Arbor household has gained influence, so to strengthen their position, they decided on a marriage of convenience with the House of Clare. In the Duke's mansion, Charles, Celia, and her father are discussing the wedding over dinner. Charles forces Count Clare to renounce his position as the Count and serve as a director for House Arbor. After rumors spread about the legitimacy of House Clare, he had no choice but to sell his daughter and follow Charles's orders. Celia accepted her fate and decides to save her father, but still thinks of Rio and regrets not responding to his letters. However, before she can burn his last letter, she hears the door open and a voice telling her to keep it down. Celia thinks a thief has broken in and gets excited for some coitus, but when she sees Rio, she runs to hug him, forgetting about all her worries. Rio tells her she became beautiful, but Celia tells him he's still an ugly little bitch. After telling her about his journey, Rio asks her about the wedding and wonders if she truly wants to marry Charles. Celia asks Rio if he'll marry her instead, but follows it with,
Just kidding.
then kicks him out and cries of joy after seeing her beloved Rio one last time. Rio wonders why Celia is feeling so sad and decides to investigate the wedding. On the day of the wedding, Charles meets with Rice and thanks him for coming all the way from the neighboring kingdom for the wedding. Rice senses Aisha nearby, but before he can investigate it, she vanishes. Charles shows Celia his other wives, and she wonders how a side character acquired a bigger harem than the protagonist. The main girl tells Celia that she is ranked 7th among them, so she should show them respect, but soon gets shut down when she finds out Celia is a friend of Princess Christina. The princess is sad to see Celia so unhappy and wonders if there is any way she could help. Celia and Charles commence their ceremony, protected by an army of guards. Charles tells Celia how excited he is to seal their marriage with a kiss, but suddenly, Celia hears Aisha's voice in her head, telling her to look to the right. When she turns her head, she sees Rio smiling and breaks into tears. Charles thinks she is weeping with joy and prepares to take Celia's hand, but before he can, a commotion can be heard from afar. Rio uses wind magic and pushes the soldiers away. The mages fire explosion magic, but Rio leaps through them. The best knights in the capital gather to protect the bride and groom, but Rio knocks them down using his OP main character techniques. Charles can't believe his eyes, and before he knows it, Rio punches him in the stomach, knocking him down and taking Celia hostage. He threatens to break Charles's spine if he makes a move. Rio talks to Celia telepathically, asking her what she truly wants. He owes her too much and wishes to protect those who are close to him so he won't have regrets ever again. He asks her if she would like him to take her away and explains that threatening her like this would drive suspicion away from her father. As the army surrounds them, Celia agrees and tells Rio to take her away. He leaps into the air with her in his arms, and Charles orders the knights to attack, but Rio evades them by flying and blocking their lightning attacks. Rice, curious about the intruder, wonders if it is the same boy using spirit arts. He tests him once more by launching a powerful dark spirit attack disguised in the chaos, but Rio manages to evade it, making Rice even more intrigued. The knight commander, Alfred, orders his men to pursue the intruder, and Charles blames him for Celia's abduction. Alfred tells him it's his fault since the intruder definitely had a grudge against him. Rio is being chased by a group of Griffin Knights, but he drops into an alley and leaves Celia with Aisha, explaining he will act as a distraction until they escape. Rio leaps onto the roof again, evading every piercing attack. He lands in the streets and tries to make a commotion by fighting the guards. Soon, the knight commander arrives. The commander slashes at Rio, but Rio blocks every attack, pushing Charles back and causing the knights to lose faith in their commander. Charles prepares his most powerful attack, creating a crater in the street, but Rio manages to escape before the attack can harm him. Outside the capital, Rio meets up with Aisha and Celia. They wonder if he was hurt, but he tells them he has finally become a true anime protagonist, and no ugly bastard can stand in his way. Before they can leave, beams come down from the skies, and Aisha feels danger and asks Rio to follow her. Truck-Kuin strikes again, and 3 kids find themselves in the middle of the forest. They wonder where they are, but soon encounter slave traders. Rio manages to slay the slave traders and free the kids. He is in shock after finding that his childhood crush is one of Truck-Kuin's victims. Thank you for watching till the end.
Yeah, too close! Being a shut-in never trained me for face-to-face situations like this! No, it's my adolescent virgin hormones. They're being overloaded by her hotness. Don't let her seduce you. Stay calm.